Hi, folks. Welcome to the 46th presentation hosted by AlmonTravel, CARP, and tonight, Railbookers and Amtrak vacations held every Tuesday at 6:30 Atlantic time. As in the past, this presentation is being recorded and will be on the CARP travel website shortly thereafter. A little bit about us. We've been in business for 18 and a half years now. During that time, we've developed some specialties. One of them is destination weddings. We've actually done 130 destination weddings in the Caribbean area from across Canada. Where that translates into our demographic is if you have any anniversaries coming up, retirements, special occasions, and you'd like to take a group away to celebrate that, then we have lots of experience to be able to do that. Caribbean area vacations, as a result of our visitations to different Caribbean countries and Mexico, we build in trips to various resorts, so we get a chance to inspect them formally, and mainly from the point of view of destination weddings, but also from the point of view of adult-only vacations and family vacations. So we have a lot of experience with the resorts in those areas too. Extended family Florida trips, we focus on theme park vacations like Universal Studios, Disney, SeaWorld, Discovery Cove, and Busch Gardens. We've been to all of them several times, and there's such large theme parks, folks, that you really need the guidance of a travel agent to help you get that organized. River cruises, one of our particular specialties. We've done 10 itineraries around the world, including 3 in Asia. In Vietnam, 2 itineraries, the Mekong with Cambodia, that's the temples of Angkor Wat, as well as the Red River in the north. We've done cruise tours on the Yangtze in China, the Nile in Egypt, the top trip of my life, as well as cruises on the Rhine and the Danube and the Rhone in southern France. We've also done the Po River in Italy. Wonderful experience because you're docked in Venice for much of the time, so you get to know Venice very well, as well as the surrounding area. And Portugal's Douro River, where we discovered the port wine and took a love of that wine back home with us. Finally, we've done the Mississippi on an old-fashioned paddle wheeler in the United States. Wonderful boat. It's kind of a combination of ocean cruise and river cruise, where they have a full stage and they can have large productions on that stage. So all the best of both river and ocean, in my opinion. Speaking of ocean, we've done a lot of the popular ocean cruises. Hawaii, which has to be done, in my opinion, with Norwegian Cruise Line, as they spend all their time amongst the Hawaiian Islands. The Mediterranean, there are 3 Caribbean itineraries, east, west, and southern. A cruise around the UK. It's a wonderful way to discover the 4 countries of the UK, which we also prefaced with a private tour beforehand, which got us to the front of the line of everything. And we've also done a cruise between New Zealand and Australia, which was a wonderful taste of both countries. Obviously, if you want to experience both, you're going to have to spend a lot more time there. And finally, on most people's bucket list, a cruise to Alaska. Now, folks, something to keep in mind there, that since we took that cruise, the glaciers have been receding at an alarming rate because of global warming. If it has been on your bucket list, you may want to move it to the top because the glaciers aren't going to be there forever. We also do coach tours from local tours like Newfoundland and Labrador, for example, to coach tours around the world. We have relationships with a variety of touring companies to find the best options for you. Well, travel conditions, as I often report, changing from week to week. The good thing for Nova Scotians is that children are now starting to be vaccinated. So within the next couple of months, I would think that about 95% of the entire population of Nova Scotia will be vaccinated. The drawback, though, is unfortunately we've just discovered a new variant of COVID called Omicron. Initial data indicates that it seems to be no more serious than Delta, though it is even more easily spread than Delta. And it's now in many countries, including Canada. So we hope that it responds to vaccinations in the same way that Delta does. We have to wait for the data to come in. One very good sign of travel is starting to return to normal is the fact that more and more travel insurance companies are offering during trip COVID coverage. You can't cancel due to COVID, but if you are double vaccinated and contract the disease and need to quarantine at destination, many of your costs to do so will be covered. My connection with CARP is through Bill Van Gorder, who is the COO and Chief Policy Officer for CARP National, as well as founding chair for CARP Nova Scotia. I met Bill about 5 years ago when I was on the board of a charitable foundation that he and a friend put together called 100 Men Who Give a Damn. And during the 3.5 years or so that we were in operation, we raised about $400,000 for local charitable institutions in the Halifax area. As a part of the board meetings for those, I grew to know Bill quite well. He asked us to book a couple of trips for him. One was a river cruise in Europe, one was a cross Canada train trip with the Rocky Mountaineers, and as a result of the service he received for that, he asked if we would become the official travel agency for CARP Nova Scotia. Of course, we said yes. I'd like to introduce Cris David of Railbookers and Amtrak Vacations, who will be talking to us about what these amazing companies offer by way of touring vacations by rail. Over several meetings in preparation for this travel talk, Cris has opened my eyes to a form of vacation travel that I wasn't aware of, having in the past looked at trains as simply a way to get from point A to point B. So Cris, please educate our viewers as well.
Danny, thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Really nice to be with you this evening. I hope to be able to share with you today, as Danny has mentioned, something quite unique and different, something that you may, if not already on your bucket list, want to add. We're going to be discussing some famous trains that you may have heard a lot about, like the Orient Express, the Rocky Mountaineer, the Belmont Royal Scotsman, and also I'm going to be giving you a taste of some ideas for taking a vacation using the train to travel independently and get around exploring the destinations. Just quickly by way of introduction, Danny's introduced me by name. I'm the Vice President of Sales for Railbookers and Amtrak Vacations here in the Canadian market. I am a 21-year veteran of the travel industry in Canada, and it's great to have the opportunity to do this presentation for you all this evening. We should be running probably about 45 minutes in duration, I would estimate, and we'll have some time at the end for any questions that you may have as well. There we are, on to the next slide. I'm going to turn off my camera, everybody. I think it can be a little bit distracting to have a little talking head going during the webinar, so we're gonna turn off the camera and we'll turn it back on again at the end during the question time. Okay, there we go. So to kick things off, let me give you a quick introduction to our company. We're called Railbookers, the Railbookers Group. We have two different brands essentially under the corporate umbrella. We are a tour operator that specializes in trains. We're not just a company that books rail tickets. We do vacation travel by train, and our two brands are Amtrak Vacations and Railbookers. In the US, we are actually the official tour operator for Amtrak. So we work with Amtrak to do a variety of different leisure trips, vacation packages, and itineraries into popular destinations along the Amtrak route network, which include very notably the US national parks. We are really, really popular for national park getaways into places like Glacier National Park, Yellowstone, Yosemite, the Grand Canyon, a lot of packages featuring those amazing destinations within the continental US, the lower 48 US states. Our other brand, Railbookers, encompasses all the other destinations globally outside of the lower 48 US states, which would include Alaska, by the way, which has its own railroad company. Alaska doesn't have Amtrak. Amtrak only operates in 46 out of the lower 48 US states. And up in Alaska, you have Alaska Railroad, which, by the way, is a fantastic way to explore the state, going overland, inland on these rail journeys that traverse the state from Seward all the way up to Fairbanks. And I'm going to be touching on a few of those later in the presentation. We also specialize in Canada, working closely in partnership with Via Rail and Rocky Mountaineer, and I'll show you some amazing Canadian itineraries tonight as well. And the main operating destination for Railbookers is Europe. in Europe, going by train is just the best way to get around the continent. It has a fantastic network of high-speed rail routes that span the entire continent from Portugal to Poland and everywhere in between, going up into Scandinavia and Russia as well. So traveling independently around Europe, usually going by rail is the best way to do so. And we put together the entire program with your rail transportation, your hotels, and your sightseeing. And we would work with Danny to create a custom itinerary to enable you to explore the destination on your own steam at your own pace, taking in everything you would want to do and see along the way. Railbookers is a worldwide company. We have offices and staff in Australia, the UK, Canada, and the US. And where that's important is that if you're traveling on a trip with us, wherever you may be around the world, we'll be able to support you with 24-hour emergency assistance in the destination. Here we have Europe by rail. All of those colors show you the high-speed rail companies that operate throughout the European continent. And the thing about going by train in Europe is that every country has its own rail operator, its own rail company. Trenitalia, Deutsche Bahn, SNCF, Renfe, these are some of the rail companies that you may have heard of. None of those work together, and there's no unified back-end system that allows you to go and book segments on all those different rail companies. What we've done at Railbookers is partner directly with all of them, and we've developed systems that give us access to all of those rail segments, whether you're traveling in Italy, Germany, Switzerland, France, or you want to do an itinerary that includes all of those. We'll be able to access the segments, the actual rail journeys, and we have a very unique feature of enabling you to do all that 2 years in advance of travel, which for European trains is kind of unheard of, because normally one of the kind of limitations with booking rail travel in Europe is you can only do so usually a maximum of 90 days prior to departure, 60 or 90 days prior, because that's when the rail companies release the inventory to the public. And so we have this neat feature that allows you, again, working with Danny, if you're doing a river cruise or another journey and you want to do some independent travel by rail along with that, we can do that and take care of it and put it all to bed 2 years in advance, locking in the pricing as well. So you get to lock in today's rates for a journey 2 years down the line, and with pin-up demand, we can expect everything to go up in price, so an opportunity to save there. What we do at Railbookers is not just a rail ticket, it's a vacation package. We are your train expert, so we'll take care of that whole rail itinerary, getting you around from destination to destination, but also a part of that vacation package is going to be your hotels, your sightseeing, your local transportation and transfers, and all of those things that you would want to incorporate into your tailor-made, customized journey for you and your party traveling independently throughout the destination. Let's take a quick look at what it's like on board a train. I've taken a Trenitalia train, one of Europe's great high-speed rail companies. This is the economy seating carriage on Trenitalia, and what's notable here is that the seats are configured on a 2x2 format. And what really is notable about that is what is missing. What is missing here is the middle seat. On trains, there are no middle seats. It's always going to be just an aisle and a window, so you can be assured that you'll never be squashed between two other passengers as you might be on an aircraft. It's also a very spacious environment on board. There's lots of legroom, lots of space between the seats. So really something that you can do with great peace of mind from a kind of a COVID safety standpoint in this day and age, where that whole issue of sort of how many people are in the space is a big concern. When it comes to the class of accommodation on European trains, you have economy, which looks like that on a 2x2 layout, and then you would go to business class, which would be 2x1, so fewer seats yet again and more space. And then there's even first class, where you can travel in giant lounge chairs, everybody with their own big window, one seat on either side of the aisle. Lots of the trains, or some of the trains in Europe and Canada and other destinations where we travel, have an overnight service. This is the Caledonian Sleeper between London and Edinburgh or Inverness. You can travel up from London into the Scottish Highlands overnight. It's a great way to go by train as well, because you You know, you get to have a relaxing, restful night's sleep, and you arrive in the destination in the morning ready to go. So that's a little bit of the background, what it's like traveling by train, what we can do to help you put together a rail journey. And now for the main attraction, which is the bucket list rail journeys around the world. I've identified 5 categories that I think really embody what makes vacation travel by rail so unique and so special. Starting with our own backyard right here in Canada, we've seen so much interest. You know, started during COVID, but it's you know, it's continued even that we're even recently as we've sort of started to go into the next stage. A new trend of interest in Canada, domestic travel, ways to experience, explore our own backyard and the diversity and the vastness of our own country. Doing so by train is just a fantastic way to take the full measure of Canada, traveling overland, seeing the scenery change as you go from Ontario through the prairies and the Rocky Mountains over to the West Coast. The Via Rail train that does that is called the Canadian. It's an iconic Canadian travel experience. And we at Railbookers also work with Rocky Mountaineers. So we have several itineraries like the one we're featuring on the screen, which I'm going to tell you about, that combines both Via Rail crossing the country and Rocky Mountaineer going from Banff down to Vancouver on the luxury daytime sightseeing train. Again, the Via train, the iconic Via train that does the transcontinental route is called the Canadian. Fantastic scenery visible from the glass-domed observation cars. That journey takes 4 days and 5 nights. If you were to do it as a straight shot from Toronto to Vancouver, 4 days and 4 nights. And most people would include a little bit of time on each end in Toronto and Vancouver to do some sightseeing, as well as an interlude in the Canadian Rockies en route. The train passes through Jasper. So while there, perfect opportunity to spend a few nights in Jasper, Banff, Lake Louise, exploring that magnificent region of Canada, particularly if it's not a place that you're familiar with or have had a chance to visit in the past. Accommodation on board the Canadian train, there are several different options to choose from. There is economy seating, where it's an open seating carriage with seats, as we saw with Trenitalia, on a 2x2 format. Very comfortable. However, on a long journey like that, and 4 days and 4 nights and traveling overnight, most people, except for students and people traveling on an extreme budget, would choose to opt for some form of sleeping accommodation. And Via Rail has cabins for 1 and cabins for 2, where you'd have a large lounge chair. There's a vanity and a covered toilet in the compartment. The seats convert overnight into very comfortable bunk beds. You have the services of a cabin attendant who's looking after you, tea and coffee service, and really taking good care of you. 1 dedicated attendant for each of those carriages on the train. Via also has Prestige Class, which is a luxury 5-star rail travel experience. Many people aren't aware that Via Rail offers a 5-star train. Each of those Canadian trains crossing the country has 1 Prestige car with 6 compartments. Really exceptional 5-star rail experience. The compartments are huge. They have that L-shaped leather sofa that converts overnight into a full double bed, which is very rare on trains to have that full double bed, big panoramic window. Peeking into the picture on the left-hand side, you have the butler. Butler service is standard with travel on Prestige, as well as fantastic cuisine. Actually, the cuisine, whether you're traveling in one of the Sleeper Plus accommodations, the cabin for 1 or the cabin for 2, or the 5-star Prestige, the meal service is actually the same, and that's a testament to the quality of the food on Via Rail. Fantastic food using locally sourced ingredients like the rack of lamb you see here. The Prestige guests, however, do have some additional courses as part of their meal. They have preferential seating at dinner, and they also have wines and alcoholic beverages included in their meal service. So again, going by rail across the country is a great way to experience the Canadian Rockies. We have several itineraries at Railbookers, and these are all customizable. So you can actually change the amount of time and the things you want to do and see in the Rockies. You'd be staying in Jasper and Banff typically. You can choose your accommodation in both of those Rocky Mountain locations between 5-star properties like the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge or Banff Springs or the Rimrock Hotel in Banff, or you can stay in a more modest accommodation in Banff Village. We include all kinds of sightseeing and highlights and experiences like the Sulphur Mountain Gondola, like a guided sightseeing tour through Banff National Park and Jasper National Park, the largest national park in the Rocky Mountains. This is a wonderful experience. You're going to iconic sites and scenic overlooks like Moline Lake. You'll also have the opportunity to take in the area independently, doing your own thing. There'll be a stop, for example, at Lake Louise, where you can spend a couple of hours hiking on the magnificent trails behind Chateau Lake Louise, going up to the famous tea house, which is just an absolute thrill, something I had an opportunity to do in this kind of transitional time between winter and spring. Just amazing. And you'll travel down the Icefields Parkway, the most beautiful highway in all the world. That's an included excursion from Jasper down to Banff, stopping at the Columbia Icefield to take a stroll out on that incredible glacier ice walk before continuing your journey on Rocky Mountaineer. Rocky Mountaineer travels from Banff down to Vancouver. For those of you who are not familiar with this train, it is a luxury daytime sightseeing train, which means the whole concept is that you travel during the daylight. The train stops overnight in Kamloops en route from Banff down to Vancouver so that you don't miss anything. So you don't miss any of the scenery. Fantastic commentary and service is standard as part of the experience on Rocky Mountaineer, as well as incredible cuisine. There are 2 classes of service on board, Gold Leaf and Silverleaf. Gold Leaf is just if you look at the images on the screen here, Gold Leaf is that rail carriage at the back of the train, the double-decker car with the glass dome panoramic windows, and then Silverleaf is the single-level rail car. In Gold Leaf, the seating area is up top under the panoramic glass dome windows, and there's a restaurant section down below where the meals are served. It's all fine dining, absolutely exceptional standard of cuisine service, and as well as that extremely interesting commentary being provided by the knowledgeable and highly trained onboard guides. In Silverleaf, it's also very luxurious. The meals are wonderful. The experience is, in many ways, just as high end, if you like. The big difference being that the carriage is just one level, so the meals are served to you at your seat. There's no separation between the seating and the dining area. So that's a fantastic combination of Via Rail going across Canada and then Rocky Mountaineer taking you down into the West Coast. I'm just showing another itinerary right here to give you an example of another way this can be done, going all the way through from Halifax to Vancouver, featuring overnight stays in Quebec City, Montreal, Toronto with an excursion to Niagara Falls, 2 nights in Jasper, and then over to Vancouver. And that's all on Via Rail, on the ocean train from Halifax to Quebec City, and then the corridor service into Toronto and the Canadian train to the other side of the country. So lots of different ways to go about exploring and experiencing Canada by rail. Next up in our bucket list rail journeys around the world is Switzerland. Arguably the premier destination for rail travel in Europe and perhaps anywhere in the world. Switzerland has this amazing network of rail lines and routes that spans the country, connecting all of the popular cities, ski resorts, and Swiss mountain highlight destinations throughout the country. Switzerland is also famous for iconic scenic sightseeing trains some of which you may have heard of, like the Glacier Express and the Bernina Express. So we have lots of different itineraries featuring Switzerland. I'm going to show you very quickly the Grand Tour of Switzerland, which is the full Monty package, which would include and incorporate all of the most spectacular experiences exploring the country by rail on those iconic trains like Glacier and Bernina Express, as well as some alpine trains where you go on a cog train to the top of some of the mountain peaks, and along the way exploring and experiencing amazing destination towns and resorts like St. Moritz, Zermatt, Interlaken, Lausanne, Lugano, Zurich. These Swiss rail packages, you're exploring Switzerland independently, are perfect as well for combining with river cruises on the Rhine. If anyone's doing a cruise on the Rhine and would like to complement that experience by going exploring the Swiss Alps, all of these packages can be customized very easily to start and or end in Basel to connect with those Rhine cruises. You're going to be visiting Lucerne, such a beautiful Swiss destination to explore, with lots of historic attractions like the incredible Chapel Bridge, the oldest wooden bridge in Europe, 600 years old. The highlight of your visit to Lucerne, however, is the trip on the Mount Pilatus Cogwheel Railway, which is the steepest train in the world that travels at incredibly steep gradients to the top of Mount Pilatus, which is, of course, the mountain that overlooks Lucerne. Such a thrilling excursion going up to the summit on the cog train. You have these incredible views over Lake Lucerne, the town, and the surrounding Alps. Your day, by the way, would have started with a cruise on Lake Lucerne. You're then traveling up to the top on the cog train, a few hours up there to take in the magnificent views, enjoy a wonderful lunch in the restaurant, and then traveling down back to Lucerne by gondola at the end of the day. This package would also include an overnight stay in Lausanne, it's the fourth largest town in Switzerland, one of its prettiest, a lakeside town where you can upgrade to a truly iconic hotel, the Beau Rivage Palace, on the shores of Lake Geneva. And this is something that kind of distinguishes us at Railbookers, that ability to choose your hotel by 3, 4, or 5-star options on every night of the trip, so you have that ability. If you're perhaps celebrating a milestone life event, a 50th anniversary or a milestone birthday, you can upgrade on the night of that milestone, to a wonderful 5-star iconic property without necessarily blowing your budget by going with the grand hotels throughout the entire package. You can choose night by night. Glacier Express, this is one of the world's most famous trains. It travels 8 hours through the Alps from St. Moritz to Zermatt. The train is configured with huge panoramic windows to showcase the main attraction, which is those incredible landscapes as you're going through the Alps. Wonderful onboard service and the ability on Glacier Express to upgrade to excellence class, which is the 5-star luxury accommodation on board, shown in the top left inset picture there, where the guests, as part of their fare in excellence class, are enjoying an included 5-course gourmet meal, and they have those enormous seats on a 1-by-1 layout, so everybody has their own massive panoramic window. We, as part of all of these Swiss packages, we include journeys to the top of some of the most famous Swiss mountains, like the Gornergrat, which happens to be the mountain that stands right beside the Matterhorn outside the town of Zermatt, which is one of the bookends for the Glacier Express. So this is a day excursion up to the top of the Gornergrat on a cog train. The Swiss have perfected these cog trains to go to the top of the mountains, and you have those unbelievable views of the Matterhorn throughout that amazing excursion. Bernina Express is the sister train to the Glacier Express. It travels 4 hours, also through magnificent alpine scenery, from St. Moritz to the northern Italian town of Tirano. A highlight, an absolute highlight. So kind of ingenious is the engineering that allows this train to travel through the remote alpine landscapes that was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2008. And throughout these trips in Switzerland, there are ample opportunities to go out and hit the trails, the paths, which Switzerland is so famous for. When you're in the resorts, when you're at the top of some of the peaks, So there's a combination of traveling by train and having those alpine sightseeing experiences and exploring nature, on your own steam, on the trails, if that's something that that is of interest to you and your party. Next up, in terms of bucket list rail travel experiences, we're going to talk about the Orient Express, one of the most famous trains in the world. Of course, you must be familiar with the Venice Simplon Orient Express. This train dates back to the 1930s, and it is quite simply the most storied set of rail carriages in the world. It exudes the glamour, sophistication, and style of that Art Deco period, as you can see from the magnificently appointed lounge car in that photograph. It's all about glamour and style. You're going to travel on the Orient Express, packing your best wardrobe. At dinner time, gentlemen and ladies are all going to dress going down to these incredibly elegant dining cars they have on board, jacket and tie for the gents, cocktail dresses for the ladies. The cabin accommodations are really sumptuous. It's all polished cherry wood, as you can see from the corridor there on the right. And the Orient Express is a production. You arrive when you're boarding the train. There's a red carpet. The entire staff lines up to welcome you on board. All the stewards, the butlers, the chefs. The meals on board are second to none, each one more spectacular and beautifully presented than the one before, again, in these elegant dining cars with their polished lacquer furnishings and attendants waiting on you with that white glove service. 4 meals on the journey between London and Venice, which is the most popular route for the Orient Express. Here you see the cabin accommodations, that polished cherry wood furnishings. And again, most popular itinerary or route for Orient Express is London to Venice. That's a journey that takes 1.5 days through the beautiful scenery of Switzerland's Simplon Pass. And we have several different packages and itineraries and built around that experience, traveling across Europe on the Orient Express. The most basic of which is London to Venice. You have an overnight in London to get ready for that experience, 3 nights in Venice at the end, with included sightseeing, a small group walking tour of the Doge's Palace and Golden Basilica, an included gondola ride, and ample time to enjoy Venice and take in the highlights on your own steam. I want to talk to you a little bit more about luxury rail, because that's a big part of what we're about. If you think back to the beginning of the presentation, I had all the different Railbookers brochures. We've got one brochure dedicated completely to luxury train experiences. And nowadays we find that this is very popular. We're getting a lot of interest and a lot of inquiries from people who are looking for something spectacular, something really unique and different. We've all been cooped up, unable to travel for the last 2 years. And for many people, it's an opportunity to go out and do something that you've always dreamed about. The Orient Express may be one luxury train. Let me tell you about a few others that we have in our portfolio. Glacier Express in excellence class. We looked at that luxury, at that Swiss train that goes through the Alps, 8 hours from Zermatt to St. Moritz. This would be something very similar to the Rocky Mountaineer. It is a daytime sightseeing train, and you can opt for the excellence class on board, where you have that butler service. You have the included 5-course gourmet meal. So from every level, it is an absolute feast for the senses. Magnificent scenery, incredible service, unparalleled comfort with the seating accommodations, and then that magnificent cuisine. So doing Switzerland and upgrading to excellence on the Glacier is really a great idea for luxury rail travel. And then there's the Belmont Royal Scotsman, which is a sister train to the Orient Express. The Orient Express is operated by Belmont, the famous luxury hotel company. They have 5-star hotels all around the world, and they also specialize in luxury trains. Orient Express is one, the Belmont Royal Scotsman yet another, and there are other luxury trains that Belmont has. I'll show you 1 or 2 in a moment. The Royal Scotsman, however, is a traveling 5-star hotel that takes you throughout the Scottish Highlands to explore all the highlights in terms of scenery and history, the castles, battlefields that you would find scattered throughout the Scottish Highlands. So you're traveling at the absolute lap of luxury, while your hotel's going with you. You also have a lot of included off-train experiences as part of that journey on the Belmont Royal Scotsman. You'll be stopping off at historic castles. We'll be able to play 9 holes of golf on the castle's own golf course. You'll be stopping in and having high teas inside these incredible castle estates. There is entertainment on board, musicians and storytellers, and the absolute finest service and cuisine that you can imagine as well. You'll have the opportunity to do hikes and short walks, such as the walk to Steel Falls on one of the stops with a guide, as well as the very finest cuisine featuring locally sourced ingredients, Scottish seafood, salmon, a very big part of the cuisine on the Royal Scotsman. There are several different cabin configurations you can choose from in this train, which is quite rare for rail travel. You can have a single compartment, a double, or a twin. So where you're traveling as a couple, traveling solo, or 2 friends traveling together, there'll be the perfect accommodation to suit your specific needs. So if you want to do Scotland by rail, but you don't necessarily want to go to that level of luxury as the Royal Scotsman, we have several other options at Railbookers that really kind of give you that ability to explore the highlights of Scotland and the Highlands. Our most popular trip there is Complete Scotland by Rail. That's 9 days, traveling throughout the Western and Eastern Highlands by train, 4 nights in Edinburgh, 3 in Inverness, an excursion over to the Isle of Skye, and an ability to an included excursion to travel on the famous and wonderful Harry Potter train, the Jacobite steam train that runs between Fort William and Mallaig in the Western Highlands. There's also that excursion to the Isle of Skye, with its magnificent otherworldly scenery. Some of the other luxury trains that you may wish to think about for your next trip, maybe in 2022, perhaps even further ahead into 2023. Australia, I'm not sure if you knew, is famous for luxury rail experiences on the GAN or the Indian Pacific. The GAN runs north-south from Adelaide to Darwin through the Red Centre, and the Indian Pacific is the train named for the 2 oceans that it connects, traveling from Sydney over to Perth. The journeys, the itineraries on these Australian luxury trains feature wonderful off-train experiences as well, such as pictured here, a dinner under the stars in Alice Springs. Just a wonderful way to enjoy and experience the atmosphere of the Australian outback. And we've got trips at Railbookers that include both of these trains, like Sydney to Darwin, 14 days, where you'll have 4 nights in Sydney, traveling on the Indian Pacific to Adelaide, and then up to Darwin through the Red Centre with that wonderful experience in Alice Springs. So a great way to take in all Australia's highlights while enjoying those 2 magnificent luxury trains. Then there's the Golden Eagle. Golden Eagle Trans-Siberian, probably the most luxurious, the most opulent and spectacular private luxury train in the world. It travels 6,500 miles across Russia from Moscow to Vladivostok. Again, this has got all kinds of wonderful experiences along the way, in addition to traveling in 5-star luxury on board the train. In Moscow, you have a private tour of the Tsar's Armory to see those incredible Fabergé eggs among the other treasures. You'll have an included meal at the Cafe Pushkin, which is the most celebrated dining establishment in all of Russia. You would be undoubtedly seated amongst Russian oligarchs and the absolute pinnacle of Moscow society. I've had the pleasure of dining there, absolutely incredible. The train itself, the height of service throughout that journey across 8 time zones all the way through Russia, beautifully appointed staterooms, and you have amazing off-train experiences like in Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia. You'll actually go take a drive out of the city to one of the national parks to see the beautiful scenery, and you'll also have the chance to meet some of the local nomadic herders. Belmont has another luxury train that travels in Southeast Asia, the Eastern and Oriental Express. This goes between Singapore and Bangkok. So if that is a part of the world that is of interest, this is also a fantastic way to experience it. Traveling in luxury on the train, magnificent cuisine, service, off-train experiences. You'll go to the you'll go to a cruise on the River Kwai. You'll visit mosques and castles and temples along the way, in addition to traveling in luxury through Southeast Asia. And then there's India. Again, a great way to experience India. India has multiple luxury trains. Our favorite is the Maharaja's Express. What a great way to take in all the highlights. Go to Agra to see the Taj Mahal. Go into Rajasthan to see those amazing imperial cities of Rajasthan. Incredible cuisine. You even have the ability to do a tiger safari in Ranthambore National Park, all the while traveling in 5-star luxury on board the train. The last of our bucket list rail experiences that we're going to touch on tonight is Alaska by rail, which again has emerged as a very, very popular way to explore Alaska. The Alaska Railroad travels from Seward in the south all the way up to Fairbanks. If you're doing an Alaskan cruise, disembarking in Seward, going by train is a wonderful way to explore and experience some of the inland highlights of Alaska. The railroad itself is very comfortable, a lovely way to travel. Similar to what we saw earlier with Rocky Mountaineer, it has a first class and an economy class. Economy is called Adventure Class, and you have the big reclining seats with lots of legroom and the big panoramic windows. And then in Gold Star, it's once again that double-decker rail carriage with the seating area up top under the glass-domed windows and a restaurant section down below where the included meals are served. And again, you have that wonderful commentary being provided about the nature, the wildlife, the ecology as you're traveling through Alaska. We've got lots of different itineraries in Alaska, touching on the destination cities along the railroad in varying durations. Many of them will feature Denali National Park as the highlight. There'll be time in Anchorage to take in the highlights of that wonderful city, which is the gateway to America's North, of course, and home to lots of cultural and historic attractions like the Alaska Native Heritage Center. And in Alaska, we can plan and incorporate into your journey wonderful local excursions and experiences, like a flight seeing trip around Denali from Anchorage, or a private guided fishing trip if you're an angling enthusiast. And there's lots of included experiences in our packages, like the half-day cruise in Kenai Fjords National Park from Seward to see the marine wildlife and the glaciers carving. We also stop along the route from Anchorage to Denali National Park in Talkeetna, which is an old gold rush town. Lots of atmosphere, boutiques and galleries and neat things to do and places to explore in the town itself, but it's also home to outdoor adventures. Dog sledding, something we can arrange from Talkeetna, as well as jet boat safaris and river rafting. Denali National Park, really the highlight for many people going to Alaska, probably America's sort of most celebrated remote wilderness area, home to the tallest mountain in North America, Mount Denali, at over 20,000 feet in altitude. And while there, all of our packages include the Denali Backcountry Adventure, which is the most comprehensive excursion in Denali National Park. You're going 92 miles throughout the park to all the most popular scenic overlooks, like that polychrome overlook we just saw. You'll have an included lunch at the Miners Day Lodge, a stop at the Visitor Center, which is just about 30 miles from the summit of Denali. And you'll have a chance to go to Kantishna, which is an old gold rush settlement where you can try your hand at gold panning or do a naturalist hike with a local guide. In Denali, we use Denali Cabins. We selected this property because it has that remote wilderness feel. It's somewhat away from the larger resort properties with all the amenities and the comforts that you could want. So that gives you a sense of the Alaska program traveling by rail, and that actually brings us to the end of the presentation. We've covered all of our bucket list destinations. And with that, I think we've got a few minutes if there are any questions or comments, or if anybody would like to join in a discussion about anything we've mentioned or touched on. I'm going to just, Danny, if you'd like to pick up, unmute yourself. I'm going to turn my camera back on.
Well, Cris, that was absolutely amazing. I mean, you and I have chatted, and we've looked at pictures for the PowerPoint presentation in the past, and I just get almost shivers looking at what you folks present, and what you have as available to book. You're so knowledgeable and comfortable in your presentation, and that came across. I think after this, I want to spend the rest of my life traveling on trains. Incredible images. I do have.
That's nice. Yeah,
I
a lot
do
of people have positive associations with trains. I often speak to people who have sort of nostalgic feelings towards rail travel because that's how they travel when they were, when they were younger.
That's very true, and I do have some experiences myself. I mean, we've been on the Rocky Mountaineer ourselves and have experienced everything that you've talked about there. Fabulous. We did that as a prelude to an Alaska cruise, and I have to say that the Rocky Mountaineer came out the winner on the experiences that we had in both the Alaska cruise and the Rocky Mountaineer through the Rockies. So yeah,
I was blown away by your your introduction, just the things that you've done, the products that you've experienced, the types of travel that you've experienced. It really, it's amazing, and it speaks volumes. And I think that's, that is it just sort of shows how important it is to work with a travel advisor. You've done it all, you've seen it all, you've experienced these products, you know what
well,
it's about.
haven't done it all, Cris. Otherwise, I'd retire. But anyway, I'm looking forward to lots more travel when it becomes safe. I did make a couple of notes on things that you've said and would like to bring those up. I have experienced as an agent the limitation of booking through some of the companies that offer train transportation in Europe, and you're right, the 30 to 60 days has been a real limiting factor. So it's absolutely wonderful to think that you offer a company that you can book 2 years in advance. So and if it's an add-on to a river cruise or another major trip, people are looking at a year in advance to do that. So it's great to know that you can match that in terms of lots of time available to book.
Very much so, yeah.
You did talk about your experiences with trains. We did experience what I would call the lowest of the low in a train trip in Vietnam. I think it was from Hanoi to Da Nang. Good things. The way I look at it, everything that I experience as a travel agent is a valuable experience because it's all about learning. And this is not a train, the one that I took, that I would recommend to anybody. Very interesting experience, and I can look back on it with a laugh, but certainly it wouldn't fit in your itinerary at all.
I'm having visions of live chickens and
No, it wasn't that bad, but the toilet facilities were very interesting, and bunk beds, and yeah, it was not a good experience. But as I say, everything adds to your experience as a travel agent.
Well, that's why you should consider the Eastern and Oriental Express in that part of the world.
I did have a question on that, Cris, and that was these being sort of lower cost of living countries. Would the costs for those kinds of trains, the luxury trains, be less expensive than if you were taking something in Europe, or do they just establish costs for luxury and you pay for it regardless of where you are?
No, I wouldn't say that the cost is. You're not getting a bargain because it is a third world country. Like if that's your question, yeah,
yes.
It's and it's similar with a lot of things. Think of an African safari, for example.
Yeah.
A lot of those countries, very, very poor. Tanzania, Botswana, but when you go to that safari lodge, you're going to be, it can be in the $1,000 $2,000 US per person per day, because like that's just what it costs them to set up that operation and to provide that service in the remote location at that level of luxury and everything. So yeah,
Yeah.
for a bit of a long-winded answer, I thought of that because I was in the safari business for a while, but
Oh, really? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, we experienced that too. Botswana, Zimbabwe, South Africa, and got to get a good look at places down there as well. Yeah, did we get what is the train that's in Africa? Is the blue train? Is it
Blue train, yes, yes. South Africa is quite famous for luxury rail. There's the
Yeah,
blue train that travels between Pretoria and Cape Town.
yeah.
Um, that's my home country, and
Wow.
Rovos Rail as well as the other
Yes.
luxury train down there.
Okay. Uh, I had a client who took the cross Canada train trip in Rocky Mountaineer, as I mentioned in the introduction, and he did the same thing that you had suggested, the prestige class train, and he had gold leaf service, and just couldn't stop talking about it when he got back. I mean, absolutely fabulous. Um, Complete
So,
Scotland by Rail, Jacobite. As I recall in my research, that's only available at certain times of the year. Isn't that correct?
you've stumped me there, Danny. You know,
I, I
I'm
think
not
that if
exactly sure of the
you,
schedule on the Jacobite. It may be seasonal.
yeah,
Yeah, it's yeah,
well, it's something we
I'm
could
not
find
aware.
out. Certainly, if a client was interested in adding that segment to it, we could certainly find out, if it was only running at certain times of year. You folks would
Sure.
know for sure. So,
It is a
um,
standard. It is a standard part of that particular itinerary, the Complete Scotland by Rail. So
okay,
it wouldn't be something added in. It's that
okay,
which is what I love about that package. It takes in so many kind of iconic Scottish destinations and experiences. The Jacobite, um, the 3 nights in Inverness, the trip to Skye. So
yeah.
you really are getting a very nice sort of comprehensive Scottish
Yeah,
encounter.
looked fabulous. Matter of fact, that's one of the trips that actually got my wife and myself interested in talking with you and Railbookers, because we did some research on that, and it just sounded so interesting. The Russian train. Do you, as I recall, there are special visas that are required there. Are you able to help out with that at Railbookers, or is that something that the client and the travel agent have to work on?
No, we don't really do the visas.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be something that you would work on with your clients, Danny. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it is. I remember from when I was at Insight Vacations, it's quite a rigmarole getting the Russian visas.
Yes.
Yeah,
I know it's a concern for river cruises, but they usually work it out so that you're not spending too much time off the boat. So therefore, special visas are not required. But yeah, that's something that's interesting. Thank you. Alaska Railroad did some research on that years ago. Looking at uh, Alaska cruises, it's ideal for a post-Alaska cruise as an add-on. So something
it
I
it it really is because it's the journey itself is as much a part of the experience as any of the destinations you'll be visiting.
yeah.
You're traveling on the railroad past just beautiful scenery, waterfalls and glaciers and mountainscapes. So um, I think that, yeah, it's the ideal way to do it.
Yeah.
The thing to bear in mind with the Alaska trips is also, there are post-cruise packages available from the cruise lines.
Yes.
Princess and others, they can sell you a package. Um, the sort of additional element you have with Railbookers is it's completely customizable by duration, by staying as long as you like. Doing you're not in any way constrained by the itinerary or the specific nature of that package. As
Mhm.
well, you have the run of the train as opposed to being limited
Right.
to that one or two cars that is owned by the cruise line.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. That's excellent. Okay, well, that's so. I guess
Alaska's year-round as well, just to bear
oh,
in mind.
that's
Alaska, the railroad runs year-round, and you can go to Fairbanks in the winter to see the aurora. If that's,
right. Wow.
that's
Wow.
an interesting thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's also something I wasn't really aware of. I mean, I did some research on the Alaska Railway, but it was mostly in reference to add-ons for cruises. So, okay, well, to close this presentation, I want to remind viewers that next week's webinar on Tuesday, December the 7th at 6:30, a presentation on SeaWorld Orlando has been postponed till the new year. So no presentation next Tuesday. On December the 14th at 6:30 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, Juliana Schmidt of 5.5-star Crystal Cruises will be filling us in on this stellar all-inclusive river cruise company, the sailing routes in Europe from Budapest to Amsterdam. Crystal also has a superb 5.5-star ocean cruise line, though that discovery will be for another time. Well, thanks again, Cris, for your presentation this evening on Railbookers and Amtrak vacations.
Danny, I've just noticed a couple of questions. I'm going to just answer them very quickly with like direct answers.
Yeah,
Jim has asked, what about traveling Vancouver to Seattle and down the West Coast? That's absolutely possible. The only limitation would be the travel restrictions, in place across the border. But Amtrak actually goes right into Vancouver, and that's very easily doable. We do that all the time. And the other one was Carol, who's asking, do prices given include hotels? The answer is yes. If you see a package and it shows overnight stays, that includes all of the hotel accommodation. Yeah.
wow, great. Well, I guess if there are no other questions, we'll finish up. Cris, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure that people who view this will learn a lot from it and enjoy it as well. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Danny. Really appreciate it, and nice to spend time with you all.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye now.
Thanks a lot. Bye, everybody.